Okay, first demo of the day. So I began with this portrait. As you know, I like to kind of draw out the shapes of my shadows when I'm working in acrylic. Since we're going to go over them anyway, there's no reason not to sort of plan your life. I like to draw a light, a mid, and my darkest shadows. So once you've got that kind of in, I'd go ahead and hash them. You can see that in my underdrawing here. I'm creating a skin tone by mixing green and red with a little bit of purple added in to cool it down. And that's going to be my darker color for the shadow here. So I'm going to go ahead and start mapping in along my lines. I'm not being too terribly careful, too terribly hung up on it, but my lines help me. I end up kind of disappearing them pretty quickly. You can see I'm using a larger brush here. It's just about mapping it in. I'm using a bit of Payne's Gray, which is like a deep navy, and a little bit more purple to really cool down and darken those main shadows. And then the purplish brown that I created with the red and the green is what I'm using as like my secondary mid shadow. With a little bit of water in it, I'm able to do kind of a wash there along the softer side of the face. Now I'm mixing my red and my green with a little bit of the extra yellow to create a medium tone. And that's going to be more my local color. It's also warmer in this panel of the face that moves towards the light. It always looks kind of nuts when you're in the middle of working through with acrylics. I feel like the halfway stage is always like, oh no, where are we going? Just hold on. We're going to come out of it just fine. I'm going to use that Payne's Gray, that deep navy, to also start blocking in my hair, my eyebrows, keep bumping those darker shadows. I like to keep my shadows like continually darkening them because it helps remind me to balance out my contrast as I'm working. If I don't have really dark shadows, it doesn't encourage me to find contrast. So I went ahead and added a little bit of a highlight to the eyes so that we could see them. I just used a tiny dot of white and a little bit of shaping. I'm using a micron to put some of my lines back in before I continue work on this. You can see as it dried down, the colors look a lot more alike, but it's also very splotchy and we don't have a lot of definition here. So we're gonna move into more detailed work and also a smaller brush and doing some like thinner layers to help blend and bridge those like color blocking effects. First things first, I'm gonna darken and cool my shadows. I like the purpley tinge because it still has warmth for my middle shadow, but I keep feeling that the darkest shadows need to go even darker. So once we've got those kind of blocked in, going back to a red and a green to create a mid again. You can see me trying to swatch them where you can see there. This one has a nice amount of red in it. It doesn't have any purple in it, but it's definitely leaning harder on the red than the green to create this kind of like burnt sienna color. I'm using it with quite a bit of water, and I'm using it to lay over my darker shadows and also over the edges of my brighter highlights in an effect that will kind of like marry them. Since it's got water in it, it's translucent, so that's helping us. I'm going to take a bit of a brighter yellow and block in some warmth and sunshine onto this part of the face that's moving towards the highlight. And using some purple tones, lavenders and mauves along the lips and in the shadow of the Cupid's bow. That is my medium that you can see right above where I'm mixing, so I do add quite a bit of translucent medium as we move towards these final layers. It just helps mix things together. I'm going to use white to do a little bit of a sheer layer to just bring forward some areas that have gotten lost because we were using a larger brush. So a little bit of medium, a little bit of white helps us kind of lighten those areas up and also preps them to receive a more vibrant color. So that little tiny sheer amount of white is going to dry down. You're not going to see it as bright as it looks right now. You can already see it kind of like evaporating out. But it just helps us lighten those areas and start to really define our lighting source. And also, like I said, once you've got a lighter color down or white, it's so much easier to glaze a more vibrant color over it. Hey. So now I'm mixing a little bit of that mid-tone, almost like an ochre, into my white and creating like a warm, buttery yellow that has some neutral into it. So it's not going to look yellow, it's just going to come through as kind of a brighter, lighter tone, and we're going to go over those highlight areas that we want to feel like they're coming forward and like they're being highlighted and they're getting the warmth of the light. So that's all along, you know, just under the eye, above the eyebrow, edge of the chin as it comes forward. And then while that's drying, I'm going through and just doing some small details and some cooler mid-tone shadows. This is a little bit like a little lavendery with some extra red in it that I like to use to sort of support my shadows as they move out of those cool shadows into warmer highlight areas. You can see where it's mixed on the palette over there. It really is like a red with a tiny touch of pink or blue in it, and then it's very translucent. And I'm using that to just sort of, with a glazing medium, start to marry out of that dark purple shadow into the medium browns, and so it gives us a little bit of a bridge between those two things, while keeping the skin feeling alive. It's not going dead. We're not using a lot of white, which can make it feel kind of chalky sometimes. Darkening up our hairline. I'm using a little bit of like texture as I'm going, allowing my brush to kind of hop and skip organically. I'm not worried too much about laying down a perfect layer. As these kind of stack on top of each other, these sheer layers, they create texture all on their own. So I used a colored pencil to do a little bit of addition to the edges, and then you can see where those micron lines come through. When you're working at the scale, it helps with the detail quite a bit. So that is our final result. That is our research image that was given to us. And those 4 colors we worked with really gave it a lot of depth, a lot of light. Hope that helps.